America is caught in an economic standoff, and whether you realize it or not, your money is on the front lines. On one side, you have the Federal Reserve, keeping interest rates high, watching inflation like a hawk, and trying to avoid a repeat of the economic chaos of the 1970s. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, implementing aggressive trade policies, pushing for tariffs that could drive inflation back up, and demanding, literally demanding, that interest rates be cut now. And in the middle of all of this, well, there's you and I. My friends, the money in your bank account, your mortgage, your investments, your businesses, all of it hangs in the balance of this power struggle. What happens next is going to shape the future of the economy, not just the economy, but of your economy, and determine whether or not you end up ahead or financially crushed by forces outside of your control. So today, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the truth about this war on your money, who really benefits, and who loses, and most importantly, how you can position yourself to protect your money and ultimately to win with your money. Now, first off, I want to welcome you to the Wealth Outside of Wall Street YouTube channel, where we expose the lies, the hypocrisy that keep you financially trapped and show you how to rise up and truly live free. If you're tired of being a pawn in the system, hit that subscribe button, because understanding how the economy really works is the first step to financial freedom. So here's the situation. The Federal Reserve, led by Jerome Powell, controls interest rates, which determines how expensive it is to borrow money. When rates are high, borrowing slows down, businesses struggle to expand, and home buyers can't afford mortgages, and the economy, well, it just cools off. When rates are low, everything flips in reverse. Borrowing is cheap, money floods the market, and inflation rises because everything becomes more expensive. So first off, let's look at what's been happening over the past few years. Post-COVID, there was a massive money printing and a massive stimulus to try to get the economy back on track. The US government spent trillions. The Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to near zero, and money, well, it just flooded the system. There was no end to the money that was coming out. Inflation, and as a result, inflation skyrocketed. Prices jumped to what they reported as 9.1% inflation, which means real inflation was probably closer to 15, 16, even 20%. And this was the highest rate of inflation reported in over 40 years. At that point, the Fed stepped back in. Jerome Powell came back to the table to try to solve the problem that he just created by raising interest rates, not just a little bit, but raising interest rates fast. He was trying to cool off inflation by making borrowing more expensive and almost unobtainable by most people. Between March 2022 and July 2023, the Federal Reserve implemented a series of rapid interest rate hikes to combat soaring inflation. During this period alone, the federal funds rate increased from near zero to a range of 5.25% all the way up to 5.5%, marking one of the most aggressive monetary tightening cycles in recent history. And, well, I guess you could say it kind of worked. Inflation came down, but now we're in very dangerous territory yet again. And this is the type of game that we find ourselves constantly in. The government just had to pass another bill just to keep the government operational for a few more months. My friends, we are constantly in this juggle between chaos and order, and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And this is the game that we will always play as long as the federal government has the ability to print money on demand. So meanwhile, let's come back to President Donald Trump. Trump's policies are literally throwing gasoline on the fire. He's implemented tariffs, which are taxes on imports from China, Mexico, and Canada. These tariffs are inevitably going to drive up costs for businesses, and then those businesses are inevitably going to pass on that increased cost to you, the consumer. Everything from groceries to gas to housing, it's going to get more expensive. And honestly, this is the worst case scenario for the Fed, because if inflation rises again, Jerome Powell will have no choice but to raise interest rates even higher. That means more expensive mortgages, credit card debt, business loans, and car payments. And for the federal government, this is a financial disaster. In 2020, the average interest rate on the national debt was about 1.65%, and this meant that the government's net interest payments totaled about $345 billion per year, which is still pretty crazy. But fast forward to today, and those numbers have exploded. The average interest rate today on U.S. debt has nearly doubled to 3.28%, and the government is now projected to be paying $952 billion in interest alone just in fiscal year 2025. Let that sink in. That's nearly $1 trillion burned on interest alone, with zero going towards Social Security, infrastructure, or anything that benefits the taxpayer. We are paying taxes on government debt. And if they continue to raise rates aggressively, this will only get worse. More borrowing will come at even higher interest rate costs, pushing deficits further into the red. More tax revenue will be eaten up by debt payments, limiting the government's ability to fund essential services. And if they go too far, it could trigger a massive recession and even a collapse. So while Trump and the Fed battle it out, the real victims aren't the politicians, they're not the corporations or the central bankers. It's you and I. My friends, it's everyday Americans that are always caught up in this financial storm with no escape. The cost of living, it's almost suffocating for the vast majority of Americans today. The dream of homeownership is all but gone, and it's slipping away for our children, for my children. The weight of debt, it's breaking families today, and it's causing massive stress. If interest rates stay high, the housing market is just going to stay frozen. I mean, listen, buyers can't afford homes. A $400,000 house with a 3% mortgage used to cost about $1,686 per month. But at a 7% interest rate, that same house now costs $2,600 per month. That's a 58% increase in housing costs just because of the interest rates. This also traps sellers because sellers now can't sell because they're locked into the low rate mortgages that they have. Nobody wants to trade a 3% loan for a 7% one. And first-time home buyers, well, they're completely locked out. I mean, I'm grateful I have a basement for my kids, but the American dream is now the American nightmare for people just starting out. And if inflation continues to rise, your paycheck buys less and less and less, and taxes eat up even more of your earnings. I mean, here are just some of the stats. Groceries, a cart of food that used to cost about $150 now costs $220. And that's if you cut back essentials. Gas, filling up your car, well, it used to cost about $40, but for the average American today, it costs $75 every time they fill up their tank of gas. Utilities, electricity bills, AC, everything is skyrocketing. And if the Fed has to raise rates even higher, borrowing becomes all but impossible. Small businesses, they'll be forced to close, and the economy grinds to a halt. And we can already see some of the data starting to creep up, showing the amount of stress that Americans are under. Today, credit cards account for $1.3 trillion of debt at an average interest rate of 24%. I mean, many Americans today are using credit cards to fill the gap between paychecks and the cost of living. Car payments, I mean, they are brutal. The average car loan today has doubled, sending monthly payments to record highs. Most people are falling behind, and repossessions of cars are starting to soar. And small businesses are dying off by the thousands. With loan interest rates for a business owner around 10%, business owners, they can't afford to expand. They can't afford to invest, let alone even survive. And more bankruptcies are coming online every single month. And here's the worst part. I mean, there really is no silver lining to all of this, and there is no relief in sight. With the federal agenda the way it is, and the Federal Reserve being trapped in between a rock and a hard place, this is only going to get worse. I mean, let's just consider this option here. If inflation cools down to maybe a 2%, but prices don't come back down, which most people don't believe is actually going to happen, and economists are reporting that it's impossible for prices to come back down, this means your salary still won't adjust with inflation, and you still won't be able to keep up. My friends, the average increase in living expenses over the last 4 years has been about 20%. That means if your income has not also risen by 20%, you're falling behind. The American dream is under attack. The system is pushing you deeper into debt while your hard-earned money loses value by the day. And while Washington is busy playing its games with tariffs and rate hikes and government spending, you're the one left paying the price. This is the game, and you've been forced into it whether you like it or not. But the question is, are you going to keep playing this game by their rules, or are you going to learn how to flip the board and start making your own game? Listen, the majority of this video is really to help you understand what's going on in the economy, because most people, they're completely unaware of how these forces shape their financial future. They are victims of their reality. When prices go up, they vote for the other aisle, right? Rather than voting for Democrat, they vote for Republican. And rather than Republican, they vote back for Democrat. No one in the Oval Office is likely going to solve this problem. I mean, the government has created this problem. The Federal Reserve fuels this problem. And until those two things have massive reform, my friends, you have to learn how to become the solution to your financial problem. And I want you to consider what that solution could actually be. Money is quite literally a tool. Now, I remember when I was growing up, my father used to tell me that they don't print money, like money doesn't grow on trees. But the reality of it is, the government is printing money every single day. This doesn't have to be a game that only the government can play. Did you know that today the American economy ensures that you have the ability to borrow as much money as you want when you pair it with an asset? The problem with most people's borrowing is they use poor debt to buy poor things, and then they have to trade their future time to pay the price of their poor financial decisions. The wealthy, they're becoming wealthy because they're using the same game that the government is playing on a much smaller scale. What if you did this? What if you went out and you took the little money that you have and you used that as a down payment on a single family home, something in the Midwest, between $150,000 and maybe $200,000. That means you'd have to come up with maybe $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. That's still a lot of money. I do not want to discourage you on this. But what if you came up with a down payment to buy a single family home and a bank came in to finance the rest? Now, you've been taught by Dave Ramsey that debt is bad. But my friends, the only way you can win in this game is if you're using the Federal Reserve System to benefit you. Right now, the Federal Reserve System is crushing you. They're printing money, devaluing the dollars that you're saving. What you have to do is you have to gain access to that printed money to buy real assets. And when you buy a real asset, here's what happens. The demand for that real asset goes up. Think about this. Everyone, no matter who you are, you need a place to live. America is becoming a renter nation. And if you're not careful, you will be the renter. But if you're strategic, you'll find a way to buy a few of these assets. All you have to put in is a 20% down payment and the bank will give you the rest and you control the entire asset. And the best part about this, you'll be paying the bank back with devalued dollars. Think about that. A 30-year fixed mortgage allows you to pay the bank back with dollars that are less and less and less and less valuable over time. The government is actually incentivizing you to do this. They will allow you to deduct everything you're paying on the mortgage. They will allow you to deduct your interest rate. They will allow you to depreciate the house, even though the house is appreciating in value. My friends, you have to understand. You have to understand that the game of money has completely changed. Most people are playing by outdated rules. They're getting outdated results and they're falling behind. And right now, it's not just like you're falling behind a little bit. Most people in the last 4 years have watched their entire financial system turn upside down. If we have another 4 years like the previous 4 years, the financial economy that we're in today will be unrecognizable. Now, what that means for most people is they will be decimated. But for those that are willing to see the world for the way it is and use the systems that are created to build real wealth, these next 4 years could be a massive opportunity for you. My friends, they're doing it. The government is creating this system. The Federal Reserve is fueling this system, and they're not excluding you from the game. They're allowing you to play the very same game that they're playing on a much smaller scale, but you have to raise your financial IQ. So first off, I applaud you for being on this channel. I applaud you for raising your financial intelligence. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to do something about it. Learning and doing are two different things. When you're ready to actually do something about creating your wealth, I want you to drop wealth in the comment below. I'll reach out to you personally and I'll give you access to the trainings that I do for the thousands of people inside of our community that are quietly building wealth, that are quietly achieving financial freedom in 10 years or less. It's really that simple, my friends. Money is a tool. And just like any tool, it can create something amazing or it could destroy you at the very same time. The common denominator in either side of the equation is you. Raise your financial IQ, use money as a tool to build and live a life that matters, and use money to buy your time back and become completely financially free. I'll see you on the next video.